Fatal interference. The covered-up UFO case in South Dakota. The lights that came from the sky. The night sky has always harbored mysteries since the earliest civilizations. We have sought answers to our cosmic loneliness in the stars. But what happened in the isolated fields of South Dakota in early 2025 transcended the usual reports of unexplainable sightings. It was a moment when the veil between worlds became so thin that it allowed direct contact that authorities desperately tried to cover up. This is a story with verifiable names, dates, and places. An investigation that encountered systematic obstacles, erased data, and silenced witnesses. A story that shouldn't reach you. The beginning of the end. A night in black and white. South Dakota, February 3rd, 2025. The temperature, -12 degrees. The sky, unusually clear for a winter night, displayed stars that seemed closer and more vigilant than normal. An empty road cut through the landscape like a black scar on the snow. At 9:14 p.m., Officer Rod Keller, a veteran with 19 years of impeccable service, was patrolling Route 83 toward the small community of Rosebud. A former military man, educated in criminology, father of 3 children, member of the local church, the type of man who formed the backbone of that conservative region. The police radio emitted the familiar background static when, suddenly, it fell silent. The failure could be momentary, but then the digital compass began to spin frantically. The onboard computer flashed 3 times before shutting down. The GPS became a black screen. Rod parked on the shoulder and tried to make contact. Unit 47 to Central. Electrical problems in the vehicle. Marker 37 of Route 83. Over. Only static responded. A second attempt brought complete silence. But it wasn't just any silence. Rod felt something in the air, as if reality itself had been altered, as if time had held its breath. That's when he saw it. A cylindrical beam of light, of an indescribable bluish, hovering over the frozen cornfield 200 meters away. There was no sound of propellers, engines, or drones, only a deep vibration that made his chest resonate as if it housed a speaker. When he reached for his tactical flashlight POF, the entire car shut down. Lights, radio, ignition, all dead, as if the battery had been instantly drained. The object began to descend slowly, defying the fundamental laws of physics. In his official report, later confiscated, Rod described it as a floating metallic dome about 15 meters in diameter, surrounded by a bluish field that shimmered like hot air over asphalt. At that moment, for the first time in his 47 years of life, Rodney Thomas Keller froze. Not out of fear, although it was present, but literally unable to move, to blink, almost to breathe. As if he were in temporal pause while his consciousness remained painfully alert. Not so immediate contact. Suddenly, all electronic devices around began to vibrate simultaneously. The dashboard flashed in an almost deliberate sequence. Rod's phone vibrated with such intensity that it seemed to want to escape from his coat pocket. When he finally regained motor control, Rod reached for the device. The phone was on something technically impossible considering its password system. The screen didn't show the familiar wallpaper with family photos, but a completely black surface with a single pulsating white dot. Then, a voice emerged. It didn't come from the speaker. It didn't echo from outside the vehicle. It seemed to originate from the air itself, as if the atmospheric molecules had been converted into a transmission system, a metallic voice that sounded simultaneously close and distant. You are at the intersection of what should not be seen. Rod tried to open the door, but the mechanism didn't work. Through the glass, he could see the UFO hovering just 30 meters above. Time was behaving The second hand moved back and forth, trapped in a temporal loop. The GPS, mysteriously reactivated, displayed a constantly transforming map, showing locations hundreds of kilometers away before returning to the current position. The radio now emitted sounds that formed structured patterns, not words in the conventional sense, but something that suggested an inhuman language with phonemes impossible to reproduce. That's when a light, if we can call it, that hit the car. It wasn't a traditional beam, but a bubble of energy that engulfed the vehicle. Rod felt nothing. No heat, no cold. A complete absence of physical sensation, as if his body had been disconnected from his consciousness. He was still aware of himself as an entity, but the physical Rod Keller seemed The images came not as traditional visions, but as concepts being downloaded directly into his consciousness. Children crying in alien landscapes, cities in ruins under skies of impossible colors, a complex, multi-dimensional symbol that evolved as he tried to comprehend it. The last image before the blackout. Luminous points appearing in different locations across the United States, followed by waves of darkness spreading from each point. Then, emptiness. When he regained consciousness, the vehicle's engine was humming normally. The heater was working. The radio was playing country music. The dashboard showed for 37 a.m. 5 hours and 23 minutes had disappeared. The vehicle was parked 11 kilometers north of the initial point. The fuel remained at the same level, something technically impossible. There were no drag marks on the exterior of the vehicle, no signs of intrusion. Looking at the back seat, his blood froze. There, where there had previously been empty upholstery, rested a small object similar to a 5-centimeter oval stone. Looking closer, Rod noticed that it emitted a faint, pulsating glow, and instinctively, he knew he shouldn't touch it. October 2025, the global connection and the conspiracy of silence. What the authorities failed to anticipate was the power of distributed information in the digital age. Rod Keller's story, initially published as a small investigative piece in the Tribune Independent, quickly took on a life of its own on social media and specialized forums. While the major media outlets treated the case as just another unfounded paranormal curiosity, independent investigators began connecting the dots. In Tucson, Arizona, a meteorology student noticed anomalies in local weather patterns coinciding with reports of electromagnetic interference. On February 17th, in Portland, Oregon, a group of amateur radio operators documented inexplicable disturbances in radio frequencies for 3 consecutive days in March. On a small island off the coast of Florida, fishermen reported that their navigation equipment went crazy, while strange lights danced over the ocean. In isolation, each incident could be dismissed as a technical failure or collective hysteria. Together, they formed a disturbing pattern that aligned exactly with the points on the map extracted from the South Dakota interference. The government, realizing it couldn't completely contain the information, changed tactics. A coordinated campaign of discreditation was launched. Experts appeared on talk shows to explain electromagnetic interference as the result of unusual solar storms. Psychologists discussed the phenomenon of traumatic false memory and how stress can cause hallucinations. A high-budget documentary on the science behind UFO myths was hastily produced and distributed by a popular streaming service. Sarah Hammond, the reporter who initially published the story, became the target of an investigation for alleged tax evasion. Her newspaper faced sudden legal problems related to operating licenses. Her anonymous source IT technician Marcus Chun was found dead in his apartment, the official victim of an accidental overdose. Despite having no known history of drug use, Dr. Arjun Mehta lost his research funding and was removed from his university duties following vague accusations of improper conduct. Dr. Rebecca Okoye, more cautious, continued her work in secret. establishing an encrypted communication network with other scientists around the world who had noticed the same phenomena. It was through this network that the most shocking revelation emerged. The United States was not the only country experiencing these events. Similar reports emerged from Siberia, where a meteorological research station had documented identical anomalies. In the Atacama Desert, in Chile, astronomical observatories recorded inexplicable interference with their sensitive instruments. Off the coast of Western Australia, Aboriginal fishermen reported encounters with ships of light that paralyzed their boat engines. In each case, the same pattern: electromagnetic interference, temporal anomalies, and in some cases, transmission of coded information that, when decoded, always pointed to the same date, October 13th, 2025. The censorship, however, was relentless. Videos were removed from platforms under claims of copyright violation. Discussion groups were infiltrated and fragmented. Witnesses withdrew their statements after visits from public health agents concerned about their mental well-being, and yet the truth persisted. Like water finding its way between rocks, it flowed through alternative channels, in codes and half-words, in clandestine meetings and anonymous servers. In July 2025, an anonymous package arrived at Sarah Hammond's personal address. She had continued her investigation despite threats and obstacles. Inside the package was a quantum-encrypted storage device and a handwritten note that she immediately recognized as being in Rod Keller's handwriting. "I didn't die. I was found. What's coming is not the end, but it could be if we're not prepared. Release this when you're safe. Truth needs light to germinate." The device contained gigabytes of data, internal files from project links, autopsy reports of non-human creatures, analyses of materials with properties impossible according to known physics, and most importantly precise coordinates of 27 locations around the world where the contacts had occurred with greater intensity. And a final message on video. A visibly aged Rod Keller, with eyes that had seen too much, speaking directly to the camera. "What I discovered is that we're not dealing with an invasion in the traditional sense. These entities, wherever they are trying to warn us. The electromagnetic signal is just the physical manifestation of something much larger. An attempt at communication between dimensions of reality. They showed visions of destruction, not as a threat, but as a warning of what could happen if we continue on our current path. The government knows this. Some elements within it want to prepare humanity. Others fear panic and the collapse of power structures. Still, others see only technological opportunity and military advantage. October 13th is not an attack date. It's a window, a cosmic or dimensional alignment that will allow communication on a much larger scale. They will try to make simultaneous contact at all 27 identified points. If we are prevented from receiving this message, if fear prevails over curiosity and hope, the cost could be the very continuity of our species. I can't say where I am. I am no longer alone in my consciousness, but I am still Rod Keller. I am still human, and I still believe we deserve a chance to hear what the universe has to tell us. Conclusion: the shadow of the next contact today. As the calendar inexorably advances toward October 13th, 2025, various alternative communication vehicles try to keep alive the truth about the South Dakota case and the subsequent events that connect the world in an invisible web of contacts and signals. The data continues to be systematically erased from public servers. Witnesses silenced through veiled threats or publicly experts who dare to speak professionally marginalized. Project Links, now with a tripled budget and operations in 5 countries, works frantically to completely decipher the messages and develop technology capable of responding in the same frequency. Some within the project advocate open communication with the entities. Others prepare weaponry based on the same electromagnetic properties of the received signals. The sightings continue, increasingly frequent, bolder, closer to population centers. Electromagnetic interference becomes more common. Moments of inexplicable technological failure, officially attributed to network overload or cyber attacks of unknown origin. In the shadows of the corridors of power, a silent battle is waged between those who seek control through the suppression of truth and those who believe that humanity deserves to know what is coming.